I signed the move-out papers while my military husband smiled and said, "You'll crawl back before the snow hits." Then I found the apartment, the woman, and the warning he ignored. So I closed the accounts in my name. The strange thing was, I did not find the truth because I was looking for it. I found it because I was trying to pay for snow boots. Joshua had outgrown his old pair before winter had even settled in, and Sarah needed gloves because she kept losing one from every set she owned. I was sitting at the kitchen island with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, checking our joint account and trying to figure out how much I could spend without Andrew giving me that look. That look meant I had asked for too much. Andrew had been using it more often lately. At first, I told myself it was stress. He was gone more. He had late meetings, sudden schedule changes, training calls during dinner, and errands that somehow always happened after the kids were asleep. He would come home smelling like cold air and expensive soap, drop his keys on the counter, kiss Sarah on the forehead, ruffle Joshua's hair, and walk past me like I was part of the furniture. That morning, I clicked into our savings statement and saw the charge. $2,700. Paid to a rental management company in downtown Anchorage. I stared at it until the numbers blurred. At first, I told myself it had to be a work expense. Andrew had a way of making his life sound complicated enough that I had stopped asking too many questions. There was always some briefing, some readiness issue, some last-minute responsibility that only he seemed important enough to handle. But this payment was not new. It had happened the month before. And the month before that. 6 months of payments from our joint savings account to a building I had never heard him mention. My hands went cold. I clicked through more records. Parking garage fees. Restaurant charges on nights he claimed he was working late. Grocery deliveries to an address that was not ours. A furniture payment for a place I had never stepped inside. I sat alone in the bright kitchen, surrounded by the house we had built together, and felt the walls closing in. The lease confirmation was buried in an email account he had once opened on my laptop and never fully logged out of. I should not have had to find out that way. I should not have had to follow digital crumbs like I was investigating a stranger. But that was what Andrew had become. A stranger with my marriage in his pocket. The apartment was in downtown Anchorage. 1 bedroom. Secure parking. Close enough to his work that his late nights suddenly made sense. Then I found her name. Jessica. She was attached to calendar invites, dinner reservations, and a few work photos that had seemed harmless at the time. She stood beside him too closely in every picture. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for me. I printed what I needed. Not everything. Enough. When Andrew came home that night, he was in a good mood, which almost made it worse. He walked in with snow dusting the shoulders of his coat and said, "What's for dinner?" I placed the papers on the counter. He looked down, then back at me. There was no panic. No confusion. No shame. That was when I knew this was not a mistake. He had already prepared himself for the possibility of being caught. Maybe he had even practiced what he would say. I asked, "Who lives in the apartment downtown?" Andrew took off his gloves, placed them neatly beside his keys, and leaned against the counter. "You went through my accounts?" "Our accounts." His mouth twitched like I had said something childish. I pushed the lease confirmation toward him. "Who lives there?" He looked at the paper and sighed. "It's a place I use when I need quiet." "Quiet from what?" He glanced toward the hallway where the kids were watching cartoons. "From this." The word landed harder than a shout. "This. Our home. Our children. Me." I swallowed. "And Jessica?" For the first time, his face changed. Not with guilt. With irritation. "You don't understand what my work is like. I understand rent payments. I understand restaurant charges. I understand you lying to me every Tuesday and Thursday night." His jaw tightened. "Be careful." The way he said it made my skin prickle. I said, "You used family money for an apartment with another woman." Andrew straightened. "I provide for this family. That does not give you the right to betray it." His eyes went flat. "You work part-time and spend my money. Do you really want to have a conversation about rights?" I stood there, unable to speak. He had always been proud, but this was different. This was not a man defending a mistake. This was a man angry that I had interrupted something he believed he deserved. I said, "I want a divorce." Andrew smiled. Not wide. Not dramatic. Just enough to let me know he had already thought about this. "You want a divorce?" he asked. "Fine. But you should understand something before you start pretending you're brave." He tapped one finger against the papers. "You live in a house you can't pay for. You drive a car you can't afford. You feed those kids because I make sure there's food in the fridge." I whispered, "They're your children. And I take care of them." "No. You control the money. His expression hardened. Same thing when the other person doesn't have any. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the furnace push warm air through the house. Outside, the wind moved over the roof. Inside, my children slept under blankets I had washed and folded. Andrew thought the house ran because he earned money. He had no idea how much of our life existed because I kept it from falling apart. By morning, he had hired an attorney. By the next afternoon, the account was almost empty. He left me $112. I found out at the grocery store. Joshua wanted apples. Sarah wanted the pink yogurt cups she liked. I had a cart full of ordinary things. Milk, bread, eggs, pasta, laundry detergent. The kind of groceries no one notices until they are suddenly impossible to buy. The cashier scanned everything. I tapped the card. Declined. I tried again. Declined. The cashier kept her voice soft, but I could feel the line behind me getting restless. Sarah tugged my sleeve. Mom, what happened? I opened the banking app with shaking hands. $112. I left the cart. In the parking lot, Joshua asked if we were in trouble. I told him no. That was the first lie I told my children after everything started. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I needed them to make it through the ride home. Andrew did not scream during the divorce. That would have been easier to explain. He was calm, organized, and cold. He forwarded documents without emotion. He spoke to me like I was a problem that had finally become inconvenient enough to solve. His attorney, Richard, sent papers so thick I had to spread them across the kitchen table to understand even half of what they meant. Andrew wanted the house. He wanted the savings that were left. He wanted his retirement untouched. He wanted to limit support because, according to his filing, I was capable of full-time employment and had chosen dependency. Chosen. That word stayed in my head for days. I had worked part-time because Andrew's schedule changed constantly. I was available for school pickups, sick days, dentist appointments, winter gear, homework folders, meals, laundry, birthday parties, and every tiny thing that makes a family function. We had agreed it was best for the children. Now he was using that agreement as proof that I had contributed less. My lawyer, Barbara, was overworked but sharp. She read Andrew's filings with her lips pressed tight, then looked at me over the top of the pages. He is trying to pressure you into settling fast. I know. He drained the account to scare you. I know that too. Do not sign anything from him without sending it to me first. I nodded, but fear still sat in my stomach like a stone. Andrew knew exactly where to hit. The first week, he froze the credit card I used for household expenses. The second week, he stopped paying for the kids' activity fees and told the school to contact me. The third week, he filed for temporary exclusive use of the house. That hearing felt like walking into a room where everyone already knew I was losing. Richard spoke first. He made Andrew sound stable, disciplined, and responsible. He said Andrew needed the house because he was the only party with the income to maintain it. He said I had no independent ability to pay the mortgage, utilities, insurance, fuel service, or winter maintenance. He did not call me a bad mother. He just made me sound small. Barbara argued that the children and I should stay in the home until the divorce was final. She explained that I had managed the household for years and that Andrew had created the financial crisis himself by emptying the account. The judge listened. Then came the part one could barely hear. Temporary exclusive occupancy was granted to Andrew. I had until the first week of December to leave. The court ordered temporary support, but it would not arrive before I needed a new place. Andrew was told not to interfere with my personal property and to allow reasonable access for moving. On paper, it sounded civil. In real life, it felt like being erased from my own home. That evening, Andrew came by to pick up clothes. He was leaving for leadership training in Scottsdale soon. He said it casually, like the timing was nothing. I was in the laundry room, folding Joshua's pajamas into a moving box, when Andrew appeared in the doorway. You should start packing faster, he said. I am packing. The deadline is the deadline. I know what the order says. He looked around at the shelves, the baskets, the labels I had made years ago because he could never find anything. This place is going to be easier to manage when it's not cluttered with your stuff. I stopped folding. Our children's things are not clutter. His face barely moved. You know what I mean. No, Andrew. I really don't think I do anymore. He leaned against the dryer. You're making this harder than it has to be. You emptied the money, cut off the card, and forced us out of the house in winter. I protected myself legally. You protected yourself from your wife and kids? His eyes narrowed. Do not use the kids as a shield. That sentence made something in me snap, but not outwardly. I placed the pajamas in the box and looked at him. Leave. Andrew smiled again. You'll crawl back before the snow hits. I looked at the man who had once held my hand in hospital rooms, cried when Joshua was born, and fallen asleep on the couch with Sarah curled against his side. I searched his face for anything soft. There was nothing. He left for Scottsdale 2 days later. I moved out with the help of Michelle and my parents. The apartment I found was small. The heaters clanked at night. The kitchen cabinet stuck when I opened them. Sarah cried the first time she saw the bedroom she would share with Joshua because she missed the painted stars on her old ceiling. I sat beside her on the floor and pulled her into my lap. I know, I whispered. I miss things too. Joshua tried to be brave. That almost hurt more. He carried a box of books into the room and said, "This place is okay. We can make it okay." He was 7. No child should have to comfort their mother like that. On the last day at the house, I walked through each room before locking the door to make sure I had not left behind anything the children would need. The house looked too clean without us. Too empty. The living room where Sarah used to build blanket forts echoed when I crossed it. Joshua's growth marks were still penciled on the inside of the pantry door. I touched the marks once. Then I stepped back. Andrew wanted the house so badly that he had turned it into a weapon. He did not understand how to keep it alive. The first night in the apartment, I woke up at 3 in the morning because the radiator made a banging sound like someone knocking inside the wall. For 1 second, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the moving boxes stacked near the door and remembered everything. The kids were asleep. Sarah had one arm hanging off the mattress. Joshua was curled under his blanket with his back to the room. I stood in their doorway longer than I needed to, counting their breaths until my chest loosened. The next morning, I started making calls. Change of address. School transportation. Banking. Internet. Everything that had to be rebuilt because Andrew had decided the easiest way to win was to make me start over from nothing. Then I opened the old utility folder on my laptop. That was when I saw the real problem. The electricity was in my name. The gas and heating service were in my name. The boiler maintenance plan was in my name. Andrew had never touched any of it. He had never cared who the provider was, when the bills were due, or what happened if something went wrong in winter. I was the one who scheduled service calls, handled notices, and made sure the house stayed warm when temperatures dropped. The water account was tied to the property, so I could not simply close it the same way. But my phone number and email were still listed as emergency contacts, because I had always been the person who handled the house. I stared at the screen for a long time. If I left the accounts open, Andrew would let the bills stack up in my name while I struggled to pay rent and buy groceries. He would call it proof that I had accepted responsibility for a property I was not allowed to enter. If I closed them, people would say I should have protected the house for the kids. But I could not pay to heat the house Andrew had fought to take from me. So I called. I kept my voice steady. I have legally vacated the property, I told the representative. The court granted exclusive occupancy to the other party. I need to close the accounts in my name and request final billing. The woman on the line asked for the date. I gave it. She asked if I wanted to transfer service to another person. I cannot authorize that for him, I said. He has been notified that he needs to place the accounts in his name. She processed the request. Then I called the heating service company and canceled the maintenance plan under my name. I asked them to note the account clearly. I no longer occupied the property, and the legal occupant needed to establish service directly. I did not hide anything. That mattered. I opened the legal portal Barbara had told me to use for every important communication and typed slowly. Andrew, due to the court order requiring me to vacate the property, and because I no longer have access to marital funds for that residence, I have closed the utility and heating service accounts held in my name. You need to immediately contact the providers to establish service in your name and maintain heat at the property. This is urgent due to winter conditions. I copied Richard. Then I sent it. For almost 4 hours, there was nothing. I made dinner for the kids. Rice, eggs, and the last of the frozen vegetables I had brought from the house. Sarah asked if we could put up Christmas lights in the apartment window. Joshua said we should make paper snowflakes. I said yes to both because saying yes to small things felt like the only power I had left. My phone buzzed while I was washing dishes. Andrew had replied through the portal. His message was short. Stop creating drama. I am in training and will handle the house when I return. Do not contact me unless it concerns the children. I read it twice. Then I printed it. Barbara had told me to document everything, so I did. I printed my warning. I printed his reply. I saved screenshots. I forwarded the thread to my attorney. For the first time in weeks, I felt something steadier than fear. Not happiness. Not revenge. Just the quiet relief of knowing I had done exactly what I was supposed to do. Andrew could call the providers in 15 minutes. He could open accounts from his phone. He could ask Richard to handle it. He could call a neighbor. He did none of those things. For the next several days, he sent messages only about the kids. Short messages. Cold messages. Questions that sounded more like evidence gathering than parenting. Did Joshua miss school? Why does Sarah have a cough? Send receipts. I answered what I needed to answer and ignored the rest. Outside, Alaska turned sharp. The sky went pale in the afternoons. Snow hardened along the curbs. The air hurt when it touched bare skin. Every time I took the kids to school, I thought about the house standing empty in the cold. I did not picture disaster. I was working, parenting, budgeting, and trying not to fall apart in front of my children. Michelle came over one evening with a bag of groceries and a box of Christmas ornaments she said she did not need. You don't have to pretend with me, she said. I looked at the groceries and felt my eyes burn. I hate that I need help. You need help because someone made sure you needed help. That's not the same thing. Some nights, I believed her. Other nights, I lay awake listening to the radiator bang and wondered how Andrew could sleep in a hotel room under warm desert air while his children learned to be grateful for a small apartment he had forced them into. A week after I closed the accounts, Barbara called. Has Andrew transferred the utilities? I don't know. He has not responded to Richard's office either. I sent a follow-up reminding them that he is responsible for the property. Can they make me reopen anything? No, she said. You are not living there and you warned him. Do not go to the house. Do not call providers on his behalf. Do not fix his problem for him. That was harder than it sounds. I had spent years fixing things before Andrew noticed they were broken. I reminded him about forms. I packed his bags when he traveled. I scheduled the furnace checks. I bought batteries before storms. I refilled the pantry. I carried the invisible list until it felt like part of my body. Now, for the first time, I let the list end where my responsibility ended. I did not destroy anything. I stopped protecting him from consequences. The cold snap arrived on a Wednesday. The kind of cold that made car doors stick and turned every breath into smoke. The schools sent reminders about hats and gloves. The local news warned about pipes, pets, and elderly neighbors. At the library, everyone came in bundled and red-cheeked. Parents hovered near the entrance with children who did not want to unzip their coats. Older people sat near the windows just to be somewhere warm. I checked out books, restocked returns, helped a man print a form he could not find on his phone. Normal things. That was what made the call feel so strange. My phone buzzed near the end of my shift. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Emily? A man asked. Yes. My name is Joseph. I'm calling about the property in Eagle River. Your contact information is still listed for emergency notices. My stomach tightened. I don't live there anymore. I understand. We were unable to reach the current occupant. There's an alert showing continuous water flow at the property. It may be a leak. I stepped away from the desk. How bad? There was a pause. Bad enough that we are sending someone out. I closed my eyes. I did not feel victory. I felt the awful drop of knowing something had gone wrong in a place that still held my children's pencil marks on the wall. I legally vacated the house, I said. My former husband has exclusive occupancy. I notified him in writing that he needed to establish heat and utility service. He is the person you need to reach. We will keep trying, Joseph said. But due to the volume, the property may need emergency attention. After the call, I stood in the staff hallway with my hand over my mouth. My coworker asked if I was okay. I think something happened at the house, I said. I called Barbara. She answered on the second ring. Do not go there, she said after I explained. I wasn't going to. Good. Send me the call time and number. I'll add it to the file. What if it's really bad? Emily, she said gently, you warned him. Later, I found out what had happened through reports, photos, and testimony. Andrew had not opened the gas account. He had not restored the heating service plan. He had not arranged winter monitoring. He had not asked anyone to check the property while he was away. The house sat empty through days of brutal temperatures. Without heat moving through the walls and floors, the inside temperature dropped quickly. The plumbing along an exterior section near the upstairs bathroom froze. A line split. Then the weather shifted just enough for the ice inside the pipe to loosen. Water began running. At first, it was hidden inside the wall, above the ceiling and under flooring. Then the ceiling in the hallway gave way. Water spread across the upper floor, down the stairs, into the kitchen, and toward the basement. By the time anyone entered, parts of the house were soaked, warped, and unsafe. The damage was not just water. It was freezing water, trapped moisture, broken drywall, ruined flooring, and electrical concerns that made restoration complicated and expensive. Andrew came back from Scottsdale 2 days later. He did not call me first. He called Barbara. Then Richard called Barbara. Then Andrew started messaging me. What did you do? You planned this. Answer me. You will pay for this. I did not respond. Barbara told me not to. The next morning, Andrew filed an emergency motion claiming I had intentionally caused damage to the marital home. That was how I ended up back in court less than 2 weeks before Christmas. Andrew looked different that day. Still clean. Still controlled on the surface. But there was something cracked behind his eyes. His jaw stayed tight. He kept whispering to Richard and looking back at me like if he stared hard enough, I would become the guilty person he needed me to be. His parents sat behind him. Patricia looked at me like I had personally ruined everything. William would not look at me at all. My mother sat behind me with her purse in her lap, twisting the strap between her fingers. My father sat beside her, quiet and tense. Barbara placed a folder on the table in front of her. I knew what was inside. The court order. The utility closure confirmations. My warning. Andrew's response. The follow-up from Barbara. The emergency call log. Everything in order. Richard argued first. He said I had acted with bitterness. He said I knew Alaska winter conditions and intentionally removed heat from a valuable marital asset. He said Andrew had been away for required training and that I had taken advantage of his absence. He made it sound like I had crept into the house and broken the pipes myself. I sat still with my hands folded in my lap. Then Barbara stood. She did not raise her voice. Your Honor, she said, my client was ordered to vacate the residence. She did so. The accounts in question were in her name. She was financially cut off from marital funds and had no legal or practical ability to keep paying for a home she was no longer allowed to occupy. She handed the judge the folder. She warned him clearly. She copied his attorney. She told him winter conditions made the matter urgent. He replied that she was creating drama and that he would handle the house when he returned. The room went quiet. The judge read. I watched Andrew's face. For the first time since this started, he looked unsure. Not sorry. Unsure. The judge read my message first. Then Andrew's. The silence afterward felt heavy. Finally, the judge looked up. Andrew, you were granted exclusive occupancy of the property. Andrew straightened. Yes, Your Honor. That gave you possession and control of the home. Yes. And you were informed that heat and utility accounts needed to be placed in your name. Andrew glanced at Richard. I was in training. You had access to a phone? Yes. Email? Yes. Counsel? Andrew swallowed. Yes. And despite receiving notice, you chose not to act. I thought she was exaggerating. The judge's expression hardened. That was your mistake. Andrew's face turned red. She knew what would happen. Barbara stood again. She knew winter was dangerous. That is why she warned him. The judge nodded once. That was the moment the room shifted. There was no shouting, no dramatic outburst, just the quiet collapse of Andrew's version of events. The motion against me was denied. The judge stated clearly that I was not required to maintain service accounts at a property I had vacated under court order, especially after giving written notice to the person granted exclusive occupancy. Andrew stared at the table. I had spent weeks feeling like he was always 10 steps ahead. For once, he had walked straight into the truth and found there was no way around it. The insurance decision came later. Andrew was sure the damage would be covered. At least, that was what he told everyone. His parents repeated it in messages I never answered. Patricia wrote that once the insurance paid, Andrew would repair the house and prove I had only embarrassed myself. William said the children would one day understand that I had tried to ruin their father. I stopped reading after that. Barbara told me to save everything and not respond. So I saved everything. The adjuster's report changed the tone fast. The insurance company reviewed the weather records, service notices, account closures, and court documents. They inspected the house and confirmed what had caused the damage: lack of heat during freezing conditions, no winterization, no monitoring while the home sat vacant, and failure to act after written notice. The claim was denied in large part. Not because winter damage was impossible to cover, Because Andrew had ignored a known risk and failed to maintain the property while it was under his control. When Barbara told me, I sat at the small kitchen table in my apartment and did not speak for almost a full minute. The kids were making paper snowflakes on the floor. Sarah was using too much tape. Joshua was trying to cut his into a star and getting frustrated every time it folded wrong. Life was happening right in front of me. Small, messy, and warm. Barbara said, "Emily, are you there?" "I'm here." He may try to use this to reduce support. Can he? He can try. But the loss was caused by his failure to act. We will argue that it should not reduce his obligation to the children. That was exactly what happened. Andrew returned to court claiming the house damage had changed his financial situation. Richard argued that the mortgage, repairs, and denied insurance claim left Andrew under severe financial pressure. Barbara responded with one sentence that stayed with me. Financial pressure caused by self-created neglect should not be transferred to the children. The judge agreed. Andrew was still responsible for temporary child support and spousal support based on income. He was not allowed to punish the children because he ignored the house. That did not mean everything became easy. The apartment was still small. Money was still tight. I still woke up some mornings with panic in my chest before remembering I did not have to listen for Andrew's footsteps in the hallway anymore. The house became a problem he could not dress up in pride. It needed major repairs. The mortgage remained. The equity he had fought so hard to control was gone or close to gone. The custom home he wanted as proof that he had won became the clearest proof that he had never understood what made a home function. People still blamed me. Patricia sent long messages about family and legacy. She said I should have paid the heating bill for the sake of the children. She said a decent woman would have protected the house even after being hurt. My mother said something similar, though softer. "Maybe you could have found a way," she said one night. I was too tired to pretend it did not hurt. "With what money?" She sighed. "I just hate seeing everything destroyed." So do I. That was the truth. I hated that the house was damaged. I hated that Joshua asked if his height marks were still there. I hated that Sarah wanted one ornament she thought she had left behind, and I could not get it. I hated that a place filled with birthday mornings and bedtime stories had become evidence in a fight. But I did not hate myself for refusing to fund Andrew's comfort after he forced me out. That difference mattered. One Friday evening in January, the kids and I walked home from a small grocery run. The air was painfully cold, and Sarah complained the whole way that her cheeks felt frozen. Joshua carried the bread like it was his job. When we got inside, the radiator was clanking again. Sarah threw her mittens on the floor. Joshua said, "It's loud, but at least it's warm." I looked around our little apartment. There were paper snowflakes taped crookedly to the windows. A thrift store lamp leaned slightly near the couch. The kitchen table had scratches from the previous tenant. Boots sat by the door, library books were on the counter, and two children were arguing over who got the last packet of hot chocolate. It was not beautiful. It was not impressive. But no one was using it to control me. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I sat by the window and watched snow move under the streetlights. For years, Andrew made me believe stability came from him. His paycheck, his title, his decisions, his permission. But stability had never been him. It was the lunches packed before school, the bills paid before late fees, the furnace serviced before winter, the gloves bought before the first snow. The doctor appointments, the grocery lists, the warm beds, and the quiet work nobody claps for. He thought I was dependent because my name was not the biggest one on the paycheck. He never understood that he was dependent on everything I did quietly. When I stopped, his world froze. I still do not know what people will think of me for closing those accounts. Some will say I was cold. Some will say I should have protected the house no matter what. Some will say Andrew only faced the consequences of the responsibility he fought to take. Maybe all of that can be true in different ways. But I know this. I did not sneak. I did not lie. I did not destroy what belonged to my children out of spite. I warned him. He ignored me. And for the first time in years, I let Andrew be responsible for the life he insisted was his alone.